Harry Stack Sullivan was one of the most influential theorists in American psychiatry, living through the first half of the 20th century, developing and mixing the ideas of social science and psychiatry into a sort of social psychiatry. Most known for his theory of psychiatry based on interpersonal relationships, he also believed many mental health issues such as anxiety and the social interactions people have with each other play a major role in personality development. Throughout his career, he made important contributions to clinical psychiatry, specifically in the field of psychotherapy for schizophrenia. Some of Sullivan's major theoretical contributions was his interpersonal theory of psychiatry, stages of development, and anxiety as a result of social interactions. His interpersonal theory of psychiatry states that our behavior as individuals, as well as our personalities, are shaped by our interactions with others and the cultural environment around us. These two elements of life and interaction are key to our mental health and development. His theory on our stages of development are similar to other major theorists' ideas of our stages of development, in which they are usually separated in time periods, with each point in our lives focusing on a fixation of some sort, like an oral stage or a sexual stage. The difference being Sullivan posits that psychological disorders have an interpersonal origin, and our drives can be broken down into two needs: satisfaction, like sex, sleep, and hunger, and security, like conforming to social norms. Sullivan's stages of development break down our birth to young adult life into 6 developmental epochs. The first being infancy at 0 to 18 months, which focuses on oral gratification and is when anxiety first occurs. The second being childhood at 18 months to 6 years old, with a focus on delayed gratification, interacting with others, and being assimilated into a society's culture. The third stage, the juvenile stage, lasts from 6 to 9 years and emphasis making friends. Then the pre-adolescence at 9 to 12 years, which focuses on same-sex relationships, usually making very close friends with someone of the same sex. Sullivan also believes that this stage in life to be the best and least stressful, as we learn to love unselfishly while having our relationships not complicated by lust. Then we have early adolescence from 12 to 14 years, which does focus on opposite-sex relationships. Finally, the last stage, we have late adolescence at 14 to 21 years of age, where we develop our self-identity. Moving on to his early life, Harry Stack Sullivan was born on February 21st, 1892 in Norwich, New York. At about the age of 2, he was sent to Smyrna, New York to live with his maternal grandmother. Growing up as a child of Irish immigrants, he was often discriminated against, which resulted in his social isolation as a child. In 1911, Sullivan would enter into the Chicago College of Medicine and Surgery. At this point in history, the Industrial Revolution would be on the rise, which could have possibly inspired Sullivan to pursue a career in medicine and psychology, as during this time period, medicine and public health would be a growing concern for society. On top of this, the social isolation he felt could have definitely spurred him on to pursuing psychology in the first place, potentially inspiring him to come up with his own ideas of things like the stages of development as well as anxiety as a result of social interaction. In 1916, Sullivan would join the Illinois National Guard, but get discharged 5 months later after a supposed broken jaw. A year later, Sullivan would receive an MD from CCMS and would commission as a lieutenant in the United States Army and get promoted to the rank of captain at the end of World War I. 3 years later, in 1921, he would begin his career in psychology. At this point in time, the world was occupied with World War I, absorbing the human horrors and the new technology that came with it. Because of World War I, humanity was able to make numerous technological and medical advancements as a byproduct from the horrors of war. From these events, we can understand how he'd want to pursue medicine and psychology, as the advancements in this field were new and much needed in America. Sullivan's adult life in 1920, we see him leave the army and become acquainted with Adolf Meyers, a psychiatrist whose practice emphasized psychological and social factors over neuropathology for psychiatric disorders. In 1921, Sullivan would join St. Elizabeth Hospital in Washington, D.C., and begin his career in psychiatry. Then, a year later, he would do his most important clinical work of his career, including making innovative techniques for his treatment of schizophrenia in young patients. In the 1930s, Sullivan moved to New York City to establish private practice and conduct research. In the following years, he unfortunately would file for bankruptcy after his father died, and he would incur his father's debts. Sullivan would also become a driving force behind the establishment of William Alanison White Foundation with his theories and lectures. At this point in time, the Great Depression would be greatly affecting America, displacing and disrupting the livelihoods of people, so this may have played a major part in why Sullivan filed for bankruptcy in the first place, on top of his father's debts. That being said, this economic disparity could have allowed him to observe the mental effects this economic instability and lack of job security would have on people, possibly helping in the development of his theory of needs and security as mentioned earlier in the presentation. Nearing the end of his life, we see that he helped found the William Alanison White Psychiatric Foundation with his colleagues in 1933. 3 years later, in 1936, he would also help found the Washington, D.C. School of Psychiatry, both being prominent schools in the field of psychiatry. Harry Stack Sullivan would eventually die on January 14, 1949. In the last years of his life, we would see that he would witness that the rise and fall of Nazi Germany, as well as the beginning and end of World War II, along with the development and usage of the atomic bomb. These historical events would have mostly impacted his theories and writing in his book specifically, as he was writing his book on interpersonal psychiatry in the latter years of his life, and solidified his value of interpersonal relationships over biology when it comes to the development of a person and their personality. His book would be later published a few years after he died in 1953. Thank you for listening to the presentation, and have a good day. And these are the references that I used.